Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another Roll20 review, my written and video review series where we take a look at the marketplace section of online role-playing website, Roll20.net. With this video, I'll be reviewing the mini-adventure Vecna Nest of the Eldritch Eye, designed by Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided, and if you enjoy these videos, consider supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Also, of course, there will be spoilers! So what is Vecna, Nest of the Eldritch Eye? This is a third-level prequel adventure to the, I was going to say upcoming, but I think it's officially now available, Vecna Eve of Ruin massive campaign book. This was a pre-order incentive, I think, from like D&D Beyond. If you pre-ordered Eve of Ruin, then you would get this prequel adventure, or you can just purchase it separately. This is also available on Roll20 as a separate purchase. It's also $4.99, so I don't usually comment on prices in terms of how that factors into my review, but just know that this is not at all a full-length campaign adventure. We're not comparing this to, Tomb of Annihilation or Curse of Strahd or anything, and in fact, we're not even really comparing it to Lost Mine of Phandelver. This is a really small, very tiny, almost drop-in encounter, basically a single dungeon crawl, which I'll get into the details for that. But just know that this is technically a prequel adventure to the larger campaign book, but is not nearly as big or detailed in terms of the scope of what they're trying to accomplish with this. It is available as a bundle with Eve of Ruin, but I'm not sure the bundle actually gives you any, there's no incentive because it's $4.99. Eve of Ruin, I believe, is $29.99. The bundle is right now listed at $34.98. So not quite sure if you have any actual incentive to get the bundle. But what I'm going to do is go over and see if you should care about Nest of the Eldritch Eye and how good this adventure actually is. Note that I'm reviewing this before I have even looked at Eve of Ruin, so please don't put in the comments or anything about Eve of Ruin, and yes, I will be reviewing that next, but I'm reviewing this specifically as a separate entity while also acknowledging the fact that it is a billed and advertised as a prequel adventure to Eve of Ruin. A lot of people had access to this before they even had Eve of Ruin as well. So what is included in Vecna Nest of the Eldritch Eye? Well, it only includes the module. There's no kind of token art galleries or compendium upgrades or anything else because it's a very, very tiny, just the dungeon crawl adventure. It does come with one 5-foot battle map, which is gorgeous looking. We'll look at that in a second. 7 creature and NPC stat blocks, all of which have token art and player art handouts, and 5 magic items. So, Nest of the Eldritch Eye is basically a dungeon crawl. It technically has Vecna cultists in it. It does not have much of a story, if I'm being honest, but it does have kind of a spiffy dungeon crawl, which I enjoyed looking at. The adventure begins. I love this cover art, by the way. Damn, she's got her fist shaking everything. Damn you, Vecna! Shake harder. All right. You come across, which I actually like the inciting incident a lot. You are hired to work as a patrol, a guard in Neverwinter. You could set this wherever you want, by the way. It doesn't have to be in Neverwinter, I don't think. And one of your patrols, you come across a shriek, and you find this armed scout, I think is her stat block, and her brother has been murdered, and the only clue is he's holding this nasty, living, mummified eyeball thing, which is a cool inciting incident, and you're supposed to track down like what the hell's going on. Although she doesn't actually accompany you on the adventure or really have any information for you, which is certainly disappointing. Instead, she just runs off to report this to Lord Neverember, and then it's up to the party to actually go and investigate what's going on. I think that was kind of a missed opportunity to have her accompany the PCs as an NPC and have her maybe have more context into the story. If I were designing the adventure, that is something that I would do for sure. But I do love the fact that the eyeball acts as a compass that takes you to the dungeon, which is kind of nifty. It takes you down these creepy dark alleys and some boards, and then you open up the boards and you enter into the dungeon. So pretty quick, adventuring hook. You can easily drop this in pretty much to any campaign. In fact, I expect that's probably what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to just be playing, the Shattered Obelisk campaign or Storm King's Thunder or any of these probably adventures that take place more in the Sword Coast. And then you could just drop this in this Eldritch Eye adventure, because it's a third level adventure. So at some point while they're third level, have this happen, and then just go back to your other campaign, and then eventually you can transition into Eve of Ruin, because Eve of Ruin, I believe, is a like level 12 through 20 campaign or something. So I think that's what we're supposed to do here. So it's more of a drop in versus like this big old separate thing. That being said, for some reason, I don't think Roll20 put this as an add-on. I think it's actually only as a separate adventure that you have to start a campaign with. Now, thankfully, they've made it a little easier to transfer your characters to different campaigns. But I think it still would have been easy to have this be an add-on adventure, because it's really short and small, and you could just add that into an existing campaign. It would be easier than transitioning everybody over to this separate campaign and then transitioning them back to the other campaign. Feels very awkward. This map, as you can see, is absolutely gorgeous. I guess real quick, I'll go over... I'm probably going to stop mentioning this in my reviews, because it's been this way for, I think, the last year or two, which is the included dynamic lighting page. This is a really great job of kind of explaining how the dynamic lighting, advanced dynamic lighting, whatever they call it, works for subscribers, in terms of now we've got doors and windows that are manipulable by the players themselves. You can lock them, you can hit them as secrets, you can create little dashes to make gaps in the walls, and how to do one-way lighting, which, by the way, I should click on the lighting button so you can actually see how all that works. It's just a great explanation of everything. This is now standard, and if you're not a subscriber, then I believe none of this actually applies to you. There's a standard token page, which includes all the monsters that are included in here in case you want to copy and paste and bring them over, or you can just drag them right from the journal entry right there. You get a blank battle map page, which... okay, they call it parchment battle map, but it's literally just a slightly different toned, like it's off-white or something, cream-colored maybe is what they would call it. Then we get the actual dungeon map. This thing is so nice looking. I love that we sprung for an amazing artist. Shout out to Marco Bernardini. Oh my goodness, Marco Maps. So fucking good with this map design and this map art. I cannot gush enough. I'm somebody who definitely runs everything in Roll20. I love having just amazing map art to show off to my party. It's immersive. It really brings us into the game. And I can't remember the last time I saw just fabulous, fabulous map art. So I'm going to be gushing about this adventure almost for that reason alone. But thankfully, the dungeon design is actually really good as well. But spoiler alert, I don't believe Eve of Ruin, unfortunately, has the good map art, which I will be crushingly disappointed about when I review that one, especially given how good this one is. Pay them, please pay your artists. Like, they're out there, right? They're so good, they're talented. Your Wizards of the Coast. This is so good. Okay, so the Catacombs, I think, is a pretty solid, damn good dungeon crawl. It consists of 16 rooms, 2 different levels, one of which is basically you just trying to get to the cultist base, which that compass constantly points you to, and then that's the cultist lair itself. I think the journey to the lair is a little more interesting, and the lair is kind of maybe doesn't have a lot going on, but I just love that it kind of checks a lot of boxes for what I'm looking for in a dungeon design. There's a lot of interactable elements. Every room feels interesting. There's a flooded, kind of sewery area where you can build like a makeshift raft if you want to and be attacked by a water weird. There's this tight gap that you can try to sneak into and notice and avoid falling rocks, and that gets you into this whole other area with these undead oozes lurking in the water down here, secret passages and doors. There's a friendly ghost, Chanel Hallwinter. By the way, am I the only one that's like, oh, I think I remember somebody with the name of Hallwinter. Isn't that the name of like the guy in the beginning of Lost Mine of Fandover, Sildar Hallwinter? Is that correct? Somebody will back me up on this in the comments. I did not actually look back and look at it, but I just looked at her name and like, that, I think that's tied to that character, but there's no mention of that. Instead, it's a nice little cute puzzle role-playing aspect where there's this ghost with a kind of nondescript face. She's just doesn't know who she is. She's confused, and the party can explore these 2 tombs and gather some information and learn her full name. And when she does that, they can loot a shield in one of the tombs, and then it's a cursed shield, and if you solve the puzzle and figure out her name, then she transforms it into a different shield. I have a small complaint here, though, because the cursed shield is way better and way more interesting than the reward that she gives you. It's a shield of missile attraction, which has its own art, is neat. It has resistance to damage from ranged weapon attacks. That's huge. Resistance is amazing. The curse is that it's kind of like a taunt. Anybody who attacks you or attacks a target within 10 feet of you has to attack you. I would argue that a lot of people using a shield probably do want to actually absorb some hits for their teammate, so maybe it's not so much of a curse in that case. But I'm really disappointed that when she, like, your reward is a much worse, or not worse, I mean, a shield +1 is nice also. It doesn't require attunement like this one does. But it's so boring. Like, why would you not make this just a cooler version? Like, maybe it's like now you can use your reaction to, absorb the hit rather than always taking the hit. Or maybe just take this but give it a +1 or something. So that's, again, something I would do if I'm running this adventure. I love the Shield of Missile Attraction. And I love the idea of solving a puzzle. It gives you a better version of an item that you can already find. That's really nice. And it's something you can't really cheat with the players because it's like, oh, well, they found the item anyway. But it's like, now you get the better item. But I hate that they transform it into a stupider, lamer, like Shield +1 is super lame compared to the Shield of Missile Attraction. That's awesome. So that was a bit of a niggling complaint there. But I like the little puzzle here with the friendly ghost. And if you notice, again, there's a split path you can take, which I love in my dungeons. That's something that I think is critical to good dungeon design. You want to make sure they're not just linear unless you're literally like exploring a train or something. Don't make it feel like a train. Make it feel like the players have different options of exploring around while still trying to put like the finale in the farthest end at the that's a big problem that I find with dungeon designs is like how do you make it so it's non-linear and the players can explore around without necessarily finding the boss room like too quickly. And there's all kinds of different methods for that, and I think this does a good job of that and really creating kind of split pathways. So the other pathway besides the secret door, the hidden passage here with the undead oozes, is the friendly ghost, and in this room full of zombies, which seems pretty dangerous, also beckoning for a fireball. Let's see, we're at 3rd level, so they don't have access to fireball, but they would have turn undead. However, there's a cool puzzle here again where, let's see, we're in room 10. The players can undesecrate a shrine. What do they call that? Consecrate, maybe? Or rededicate. Okay, sure. They have to use an action, and then they have to do another thing, either using a spell slot or making a performance check by casting or singing a song or something. That's kind of cool. And that will actually instantly destroy all the zombies. You would have to be pretty obvious about that to the players. Like say, okay, you come in here, you see the shrine is messed up. All of you roll a religion check to see like if you know that consecrating the shrine would help against the zombies. It said the check succeeds by 3 or more. I would definitely call out to that for my players so that they have an option. Because otherwise, I don't know if anybody would think of that to be like, oh, well, let's consecrate this shrine and maybe that would have a giant AoE explosion that only takes out the zombies. Like, that never happens, right? So, but that's a cool aspect, and I love battles that include other objectives. So it's a cool thing where the party has to spend at least like 2 actions doing this, and meanwhile, all these zombies are coming at you. So really neat idea there. And then, of course, the eyeball they've been using this whole time unlocks the door. Look at this awesome art. I fucking love this. You can see the dynamic lighting, how it works here. Very few doors. There's a one secret door here, but otherwise it's mostly just kind of hallways and stuff. But the detail is just fabulous. Then we transition into the actual lair, which is a little less interesting. I get that obviously there's not like monsters and creepy things hanging around this lair. Doesn't really make sense, but I still think for a Vecna cultist lair, there's really not much going on down here. It's basically just the boss room. There's a bunch of sleeping cultists in cots over here. I probably would add like the little Z symbol on there to make it so they're sleeping. The players can sneak through or they can just battle them. Or there's a side room with some extra lore bits where you can learn about maybe what the Vecna cult is doing down here. And then we get the fabulous looking finale room where the head cultist, who is literally just a cult fanatic stat block, no, unique, interesting stat blocks in here, unfortunately. Everything is very basic monster manual stat blocks. They are pulling like evilness out of the cultists, which manifests as shadows and creates your big boss battle, which is a cult fanatic, which is not a very big boss stat block. I'd give him at least max hit points, but I mean, he's got spiritual weapon and hold person, I believe. Yeah, inflict wounds. Those are fine spells, but with a low AC and generally low hit points, I don't think he's going to last very long. The real danger, though, are these shadows, which do not have very good defenses, but especially if it's dark and they can dart around and do their powerful shadow draining ability is pretty nasty against low-level PCs. So it's a decent final battle. And then there's just not much story here, unfortunately. There's no, you're supposed to be able to take them alive was something that that woman on the cover page wanted you to mention is like, hey, can we get some answers from them and take them alive? But there's no real conclusion in terms of like, wait, what answers are we getting here? Other than maybe there's other like just Vecna cults around the city, but you don't really get any, there's not really any good tease about like, okay, what exactly are they doing here? What's their grand plan? It's just this like, oh yeah, there's Vecna cults around is like the only thing that you really learn, which is definitely disappointing story-wise. Also, I found one error. There's supposed to be, it looks like, at least one player art handout, but you can see it. There's no link to it here in the adventure called the Ritual Chamber art. I have not seen the physical book, so I assume there's actual cool artwork of this chamber, but it is not in this Roll20 version. That just seems like hopefully an oversight that they will correct. The only artwork we have is of the monsters and the actual cover art. So it feels like there should be at least one more cool art handout you can hand to the players, but as of right now, when I'm reviewing this, it is not available in here. The reward ultimately is that Vecna himself, I guess, appears, is this cool, again, it's just the cover image, but that's kind of fun that Roll20 made a token of it. You can plop that onto your map, turn it over to the token side, it's right on the GM layer, and do this fun little, I guess, evil message where he says, you've brought me new points of interest. May we meet again, but until then I have my eye on you. And then he rewards the players, which it does mention that what is it? He like respects everybody that rewards him. I forget where it says that. That's something about. Yeah, there it is. Vecna is known to bestow supernatural gifts on mortals who impress him, regardless of their affiliations. I would have thought this would be a cool opportunity to like do something that like Baldur's Gate 3 does, or what was it? Neverwinter Nights: Mask of the Betrayer did this, where it kind of gives the party some kind of ongoing curse, or maybe like Tomb of Annihilation, where they're dealing with this effect, and that becomes like the motivation for the main quest, right? Like it's like, oh no, I've been inflicted with this thing inside me. It's like a ticking time bomb or something, and that's why we have to solve this main quest. Hopefully they want to do that anyway because they want to play the campaign, and their characters are generally want to be heroic. But if anything, like that makes like a personal motivation to do the thing because suddenly we've been cursed with this effect. That's not what happens here. Again, that's probably something I would change. Instead, they're just given a supernatural gift, a charm, which a charm is just a magic item with a finite amount of uses. There are charms in I think it's the Dungeon Master's Guide that includes some charms. You're supposed to roll a number, and they have a 50% chance of gaining one of these two charms. One of them is way better than the other one, by the way. It's the charm of the Eldritch Eye and the charm of the Creeping Hand. The Eldritch Eye, which is the weaker one, lets you cast Clairvoyance for free 3 times. Clairvoyance is a spell I don't think I've ever seen used in all of my years of playing D&D. Now, maybe it's just because of our party and stuff, but it kind of works like a sensor or something, like putting an alarm somewhere or being able to see things. I don't know. It's very, very niche, I think. I'm sure I will get comments about, oh, Eric, my party used this clairvoyance spell in this cool way. Like, that's awesome. And maybe if you gave somebody a free clairvoyance this early in the campaign, they would find cool uses for it. Also, it looks like it costs 100 gold pieces if you have to cast it normally, but I guess if you can cast it for free, maybe you'd use it more often. However, I would argue, look at this other charm you get. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can infuse your strike with life-stealing energy. Your attack deals an extra 1d10 necrotic damage, and you gain 5 temporary hit points. That is an amazing charm that everybody's going to take advantage of and really enjoy having. You can only use it 5 times, but still, this early on, you can just say, okay, well, I'm going to choose to do an extra d10 necrotic damage and gain 5 temp hit points. That's awesome compared to clairvoyance. Like, if I earned the clairvoyance one and somebody else got this one, I'd be like, well, damn. So just kind of a funny little motion right there. It might be fun also to give each party member a different charm rather than just having 2. So it's kind of a bummer they only came out with 2, and one of them is way better than the other one. That's basically the whole adventure. Like, even the term adventure seems, I guess I've reviewed a lot of DM's Guild content that would certainly classify this as an adventure, and to me, the best adventures are based around a dungeon crawl, because that's where D&D really shines, is the dungeon crawl. And I think this is a well-designed dungeon. I think as a prequel to Eve of Ruin, though, it feels like they did not do nearly enough with it. I mean, even the conclusion doesn't have very much in there. It still lurks in the shadows of Neverwinter, more nefarious schemes in service of Vecna. Continue rooting out these cultists, culminating an adventure through the sprawling catacombs beneath Neverwinter's Never-Death Graveyard, which presumably is the beginning of Vecna Eve of Ruin. Again, I have not looked at that yet. Why? There's no connective tissue here, right? There's nothing that really brings it to, which was tricky because this was a prequel adventure for 3rd level, and again, I believe Eve of Ruin takes place at a much higher level. I don't even know if Eve of Ruin includes ways to like fast-track the players through other mini adventures or something. But I was hoping for at least something that points, I don't know, does something more with the story. And especially since you're capturing a big deal of this thing is you're supposed to try to capture everybody alive, which is actually something that doesn't happen very often with D&D. We're usually just killing, even like bandits and stuff. We typically have no problem just murdering people left and right. You do get extra rewards if you capture people alive, and yet they don't seem like they have any more information. It doesn't seem like there's any like story benefit for actually doing that. So story-wise, I think it's disappointing, but dungeon-wise, I think it's actually pretty cool. Let's go over my pros and cons for Nest of the Eldritch Eye. Pro, intriguing, inciting incident. I do think it starts off exciting and with a cool idea, which is a murder, and you're supposed to investigate this murder, although the investigation is just a dungeon crawl, but still, and you get a little thing that points you to the dungeon. That's actually just a really clever drop-in way of getting players from patrolling the streets into a dungeon beneath the city. It's very clean. It's very interesting. It's fun. Yes, I wish the actual NPC that like alerts you to this happening had like anything to do with the story or more involvement. She's on the cover page, but I do think it's a pro ultimately for me. Pro, excellently paced dungeon crawl. I do think from a design standpoint, it's not necessarily one of my favorite dungeons. I think one of my all-time favorites is probably still the Red Brand Hideout in terms of how, for low-level dungeons, how well it, paces everything and the assortment of creatures and the way the ecology works. It feels like a lair, but also there's dangerous like monsters there. There's people to free. There's just a lot of interactive. There's secret doors. A lot going on in the Red Brand Hideout. I think it's still one of my gold standards for dungeon designs. But this one is pretty close. I would say it's up there in terms of a good dungeon design. There's multiple paths players can take. There's some RP puzzle moments. There's a lot of combat opportunities. I think where it loses me is the second half of the dungeon with the actual cult layer is not quite as interesting. It's just kind of a mini gauntlet of sleeping cultists and then the actual boss room. I wish there was just a little bit more involved down here because I love this first area, and ultimately I did put it as a pro on my review. And then pro, the fucking map art. Marco Bernardini, holy crap. You have spoiled us. You have absolutely spoiled us with how good this map art is. This is the shit that I want. Just fucking stick it right into my veins. I love this map art so much, and that motivates me as somebody who wants to run all my stuff on a virtual tabletop to run this adventure. If this had been given the, black and white graph paper mentality, I'd be like, oh, well, the dungeon design's pretty good, but there's just no way I would run this, or I'd have to find somebody else to do the map art or something. But because of this, it does really elevate this product so much for me. It looks amazing. I know my players would appreciate it. And yes, this is one of my big selling points for this entire adventure, frankly. Cons, it's a bare story. It's more of a drop-in encounter than a prequel adventure to Vecna, Eve of Ruin. I couldn't really... Maybe I'll change my tune when I actually look at Eve of Ruin, but as of right now, I'm, looking at this trying to find where does it make me excited about a Vecna campaign versus it just feels like another cult layer, right? Like any of the other evil cultist stuff, it just feels a little too generic. Like I'm not getting the fact that there's a wider story out there based on this adventure. So for that, it is pretty disappointing. All right, so final verdict. While lacking in story and undeserving of the prequel tag, Vecna Nest of the Eldritch Eye is a solid little dungeon crawl adventure and easy to drop in to any campaign. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews, follow our own D&D adventures here on YouTube, and support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, Brennan, Zenicider, Eclectic, Roleplay Roll, Christopher, Corey, Big Nut, John F., John L., Eric, Tyler, Nathan, Camp Crystal, Counselor, Andrew, Dell, The Reldron, Captain Woody 79, Stephanie, Patrick, Jason, Ismail, Amit, Limpy, Spud, Sharni, David, William, Amnesiac, Warden, Mike, Cutest, Fox, and gold patrons RPG Paper Times Pretty Boy, and Yuma, The Lizard Lounge, Sam, Jerome, Nathan, Fast, Scott, Rufus, Carolyn, Jerry, Glenn, Marcus, and Mark. Thank you all very much for your support.